Oh, sorry, it's on. Steve Mishu, Metro Water Services, Development Services. Yeah, so it's exciting times for us that we are able to not only staff up, but to staff up with some pretty great engineers. I'm going to go ahead and just call them up here and let them give like a 10-minute talk about their job. No, I think what we'll do is I'll call them up one by one, and if they could just say something interesting about themselves or not interesting, we'll just call it a day from there. All right, the first one, I'll get Jennifer Knopf up here. I will mention, she used to actually be the secretary of the Stormwater Management Committee at one time.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Knopf. I'm actually a rehire because I was at Metro for like 20 years and I left in 2022 to go work for the city of Murfreesboro. And I was also like a plan reviewer there, but I was also the city's floodplain administrator. So and I really enjoyed it. And it was a lot of fun. But Metro wanted me to come back really bad. So, so I'm back.
Welcome back, Ms. Knopf.
She started here when she was 5, so that's all right. Mr. Gabe.
Good morning. I'm Gabriel Moore. I could ditto Jennifer's speech just a minute ago. I'm a former Metro employee with Development Services. I was able to come before this body a few times in my previous service, and actually went to Murfreesboro to work. Came back to Metro. So anyway, ditto. Glad to be here and glad to see you guys in the future, I'm sure. So
Wonderful. Thank you, Gabriel.
Hey, Gabe, you think you could flip them?
That's Metro 2, Murfreesboro 0, if I'm keeping score. So.
Tremendous rehires. Rehires. All right, let's seniority. Let's get James over here. What we're doing is just saying her name and one either interesting or non-interesting thing about yourself. Up here.
It's always on the record. Nice to meet you guys. I'm James Harp. I just started here in January. And interesting fact, I grew up in Germany and just got to travel the world. It was a great experience to have a childhood in. And when I came to America, it was a giant culture shock. So, yeah, that's me. Nice to meet you all.
Very interesting, James. Thank you. It's always good to have global perspectives in our stormwater department. So.
And our hope is he's done traveling. All right, we got one more. We got Mr. Evan.
Hello, everyone. I'm Evan Lockhart. My brother Matthew's in the back of the room. Interesting fact about me, I have a twin sister. So.
Oh, not a twin brother.
Not a twin brother, but we do look somewhat alike. So.
Thanks.
We were able to steal him from the private sector, so we're happy to have him. He didn't mention it, and the gentleman in the back didn't mention it, but he's also one of 3 Metro Water employees. His father is also a Metro Water employee. I don't think I see anybody else, so thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Wonderful, Mr. Mishu. Thank you. That's what I heard was regional collaboration. I heard global perspectives, and I heard private sector expertise. Way to go, Metro Water Services.
And an ecstatic Steve Mishu.
Ecstatic Steve Mishu. All right, moving on. Always happy to do that and look forward to more as the department grows. I'd like to rearrange the agenda, if I may, and move, because I know we have several folks here. Raise your hand if you're here for the Hobbs Creek case. Okay, yep. I'd like to eliminate the folks behind me because I can't see what they're doing. So I'd like to move the Hobbs Creek case to the front, if I may, and then we'll go back to our original order, which would be the Carl Place case, and then we'll go from there. So with that, I'll let Logan introduce the Hobbs Creek case, and if the applicant could come to the front while that's being done.
I think we need 80 minutes.
I'm rearranging too much. Sorry. Thank you. Second item of business, we need to review and approve or edit last meeting's meeting minutes. That's customary for us to do that in a public event, and so I'll let the commissioners do that. I'll entertain a motion when ready. I'm sorry. I made a mistake, and so then therefore my mistake transferred. We're going to review the meeting minutes and make a motion on our last case first, and then. I'm sorry. Yeah. No worries.
I would move to approve the meeting minutes and decision letter as presented.
Great, Commissioner Simpson. There's a second. Second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? None. Motion carries.
I was going to ask, do we know if Mr. Fulmer or Commissioner Camp are going to be in? If not, I might scoot over to have a little room over here.
You feel the same pressure I do. So yes, please come over. Commissioner Fulmer will be attending. He's going to be a few minutes late. He's parking now. So. Okay, at this time, we're going to move to the cases, and the first will be, as we rearrange the agenda, to have Hobbs Creek first, and I'll let Logan introduce the case, but there's also a Metro Water Services presentation to precede the applicant's presentation. So with that, Logan, please introduce the case.
Opening statement to the applicant. If you are not satisfied with the decision made by the Stormwater Management Commission, you may appeal the decision by filing for a writ of certiorari with the Davidson County Chancery or Circuit Court. Your appeal must be filed within 60 days of the date of the Commission's decision. You are advised to seek the independent advice of legal counsel to ensure that your appeal is filed in a timely manner and that all procedural requirements have been satisfied. Case number 1 on the agenda, 2025-00008, Hobbs Creek at 2202, 2204, and 2202B Hobbs Road. APNs are 131012, B00200C0, 131012, B00100C0, and 131012B90000C0. Inspector is NPDES, Council District 34, Sandy Ewing. Applicant's request, disturbance of the Zone 1 stream buffer to allow impervious structures within the limited common elements, fenced-in backyards of 2202 Hobbs and 2204 Hobbs to remain. Continuous mowing and maintenance of portions of the stream buffer, waiver of buffer signage, request not to have an engineer and landscape architect prepare the plans. Appellants are Ray Lucas and David Mott, represented by Ray Lucas and David Mott. Comments, Stormwater staff. NPDES staff discovered unauthorized disturbances to a no-disturb riparian buffer during a routine inspection of stormwater control measures at the property of 2202B Hobbs Road. The no-disturb buffer became effective when the parcel redeveloped under grading permit 2016-043549. The disturbance included the removal of mature trees, mowing, and the installation of unapproved impervious surfaces within the defined no-disturb buffer, which is common space owned by OIC Hobbs Creek. Per Metro Stormwater Management Code and Regulations, NPDES initiated enforcement proceedings to the Hobbs Creek HOA, requiring the disturbed buffer areas to be restored. While NPDES recognizes the unique circumstances of the situation that led to the disturbances and are pleased with the good faith effort of the applicant/HOA to provide offsetting mitigation, only the Stormwater Management Commission has the authority to approve this request for buffer encroachment. Codes, no comment provided. Planning, no comment provided. Greenways is not requesting a greenway or greenway easement.
Okay, great. I think there was a staff member from Metro Water Services to speak. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. And you may want to have the applicant come up.
And then
To that.
the applicant is here. Would you also please come to the front chairs, and after we hear the Metro Water presentation, we'll start your presentation. Yes, if you would mind. If you would please introduce yourself and begin.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Robert Topolsky. I'm with Metro Water Services, Stormwater. I'm the stormwater inspector on this case for the stormwater control measures. So on June 9th, 2023, I conducted a routine stormwater control measure inspector at Hobbs Creek and found the stormwater control measures generally to be with no issues. However, I did observe 3 water quality disturbance areas with the buffer zone. So area A is the western fenced area north of 2204 Hobbs Road. That's the Lucas residence. Trees were removed, impervious structures installed within the Zone 1 buffer. Area B is the eastern fenced area north of 2202 Hobbs Road, the Mott residence. Trees were removed, impervious structures installed within the Zone 1 buffer. And then the area C is the common area north of the stream. Trees were removed and regular mowing was observed within that Zone 1 buffer. So this is the as-built for this development that shows the Zone 1 buffer. The approved grading permit plans also showed that Zone 1 buffer. So this is area A, and on the left is before the final metro construction inspection, which was in at 9/6/22, and then on the right is after that final metro inspection. So on the left, you can see that there was a fence that was legally installed, and then the trees that had the X's were removed after that inspection. You can also see a new fence had been installed that was a little closer to the flow path than the initial fence. So also behind that walled fence was impervious structure, the patio that was installed. So this is area B. This is the eastern fenced area north of 2202 Hobbs Road. Again, on the left is before the final metro inspection, and on the right is after the final metro construction inspection. This fence was also legally installed before the final inspection. This tree with the X was removed after the final inspection. And then during my inspection, I observed this impervious surface had recently been installed. So this is the area C, the common area north of the stream. And again, photos on the left are before the final metro construction inspection. And on the right is actually during my initial inspection, which was after that final inspection. So trees were cut. There had been a fence installed across the stream at the eastern property line, and the buffer zone was actively, being regularly mowed. So generally, a hydrologic determination using TDEC's Division of Water Resource Guidance classifies a water course as anything that scores less than a 19 as a wet weather conveyance, and anything that scores a 19 or above as a stream. So in association with this grading permit, in 2016, the hydrologic determination scored a 21 as a stream. And then in response to my notice of noncompliance, the HOA had a hydrologic determination that scored an 18, which was wet weather conveyance. They needed TDEC's concurrence to have that determination, and TDEC's determination was 20.50 and classifying it as a stream. So on August 9th, 2023, I issued my notice of noncompliance in accordance with Metro Stormwater Management Manual Volume 1, Regulation 6.10, water quality buffers, and had the following requirements. To remove impervious structures within the Zone 1 and stabilize any exposed soils. Also to allow the areas within the buffer zone 1 to remain undisturbed and to grow back naturally. They may submit a buffer restoration plan with desired native plantings as an alternative. 3 is to, for the stream buffer, do not disturb signs must be placed around the full perimeter of the Zone 1 buffer within each lot where the disturbance has occurred. And 4, to plant back native trees for every mature tree that was removed. And in that notice of noncompliance, there were instructions for appealing these requirements with the Stormwater Management Commission. And so that brings us to today.
Thank you for that presentation. Very detailed. Thank you. Okay, with that, I'll give the applicant a rundown of how this works. You'll introduce yourself. You'll have 10 minutes to present your case. I'll give you a 2-minute warning. We'll close the presentation, open it up for public comment. If there's anyone here to speak in favor or against, I'll ask them to come to the podium to speak. They'll have 2 minutes to speak, and we'll offer some time for any rebuttal you may have, and then we will close public hearing and open it up for the commission to deliberate and may have some questions back and forth to you. And so with that, if you wouldn't mind, when you speak, please press your mic button to engage on the device here.
Is it okay if I stand up there because I've got a deck?
I think that's okay. Sure. Yep. And so I'd like for you to go ahead and do that and introduce yourself, and I'll start the clock after the introduction.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. Thanks, everyone. Good morning. I'm Ray Lucas. I was the red Lucas that was up on the screen earlier. And unfortunately, Dr. David Mott can't be here today. He's actually in Asia, giving some seminars. In speaking with the impervious structures and the improvements that we made in our collective backyards, we were unaware, both the Motts and the Lucases were unaware that any buffer zone encroachments. Actually, both of us, both families, prior to making any improvements or any changes in our fenced-in backyards, actually met with Horry and Smith multiple times, because at the time they were leading up the HOA. So obviously we were very surprised to get the notice, and I want to thank Rob for being patient with us, because it's taken some time for us to kind of work through the issues. Anyway, so the non-compliance states that fenced-in open space, actually those are limited common elements that are in the homeowner's control. Those are the fenced-in areas of the Motts and the Lucas. So, and we, as the homeowner in that limited common element, the maintenance and general upkeep is on behalf, we have to do that as the homeowner. So again, prior to making any modifications, we engaged Horry and Smith, who was the developer, multiple times prior to making those improvements in our backyards. So hopefully we submitted actually a bigger, more detailed deck. This is just a summary of what we submitted. Hopefully everyone has looked through that. But so we took necessary steps. We actually engaged experts, Roy Dell, who was on a former Stormwater Management Commission member. You saw earlier from Rob's deck that we went out and got our own HD since the initial one's valid for 5 years. And it came back as a wet weather conveyance. I believe it scored an 18. And then, of course, as previously mentioned, TDEC did not concur, with our findings. We have proposed a mitigation plan. It's a part of the bigger deck. And again, this is to support the variance request. We work with Sunrise. That's the maintenance crew and the landscaping company that does our HOA. They've been in business for over 40 years here in Nashville. And we have provided a pretty extensive mitigation proposal, which is actually over 250 shrubs, grasses, and plant cover, ground cover plants, and including some trees in those general common element area that were cut down. And again, the Motts have also committed to do some additional landscaping in their fenced-in backyard. In my backyard, that's already been done. Again, our goal there is to strengthen the existing stormwater control measures that we have, including keeping that the common area. It's a lot of Bermuda grass there. We want to make sure we keep that healthy and lush. The results from the recent weather event, the reason why we're holding this today and not a couple weeks ago, we had just under 5 inches of rain over a 9-hour period. You can see goes from 9:30 a.m. to 10:30 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. The buffer and the retention areas did their job, right? They minimized, prevented flooding, no erosion, and protected the surrounding yards and houses and adjacent communities. And I did thanks for ChatGPT, so I just put that second bullet point there. It's very, very rare, having this type of occurrence. But you can see through the pictures, the bioretention areas did their job, and kind of a natural sponge, just holding the water and then dissipating without it running off. Fire thoughts. Again, the situation is a lack of clarity, non-intentional non-compliance. We felt we worked in good faith with the developer, and the buffer zone was never clearly identified before the homeowners made improvements, or actually before we bought our homes. We believe our mitigation measures will further improve the stormwater management in the entire community, and that's it. We appreciate the time, and again, we want to thank Michael and Rob and Logan for helping us, because we're just homeowners. We have no idea, so we really appreciate it. That's it.
Okay, great, Mr. Lucas. Thank you. If you would mind turning off the mic there, and I'll reserve your time for rebuttal if needed. Okay, with that, we'll close the applicant's presentation and open up for public comment. Is there anybody here to speak in favor or against? If you could raise your hand. Okay, we'll take the in favor folks first, please. And if you would mind introducing yourself and giving your address. And don't forget to hit the green button there on the mic. Yep.
Thank you. I'm Caroline Unger, and we live at 514 Hobbs Creek. And I'm just up here to say we've never had any issues. I know Ray personally, and I know he's learned everything he possibly could to be prepared for this. We've never had issues in our neighborhood that have been impacted due to this buffer. I personally don't quite understand it based on the parcel viewer maps for Metro, because they don't reflect this as a stream or a stream buffer. But I can say we haven't been impacted, and we're here in support of Ray, and we really are showing support, and we've not had any issues. And we see this as a very minor issue, and we've done everything we can to work with our neighbors next to us in Village Hall, despite having a history of several issues with them. And we just really hope that Ray and David can show our support for them. So that's really all I can say, is that we haven't had any issues, and this isn't reflected as a stream or a stream buffer in the Metro records that are available to the public. Thank you.
Is anybody else here to speak in favor? Okay, if not, I'll take the first person in opposition. I think your mic is already on, so you're good there. Just introduction and address, please.
Hi there, I'm Jane Mills, and I'm the HOA president next door at Village Hall. I wanted to thank you all for having us here. I want to say to the Hobbs Creek people that we have utmost sympathy for you. We know that part of your water that comes through your property onto ours comes from your west side, and we are in the same position. We have water that comes from our west side, but that would be from your property. So that's what I am here, and I'm really not here in opposition. I'm here mostly in kind of as neutral. Our concern is that the Hobbs Creek mitigation is adequate. That because we have had some damage, but from the non-compliance, erosion through a slope down from Hobbs Creek, and we installed a flume or a swale to direct the water down from the stream or wet water conveyance as it used to be, and part of the top part of that has eroded away from the water coming from the Hobbs Creek property. So one of our concerns is that there might be reparation for damage that has already been done to our property, but also like our main concern is that the mitigation is adequate. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Mills. Okay, is there anybody else? All right, seeing none. Logan, did we receive any letters, signals?
Yes, we have both comments in support and in opposition that should be on your tablets. I believe some of those are from Ms. Mills on the opposition, and then the in support was from a Joseph Keel at 521 Hobbs Creek Drive.
Okay, anything from council?
No, I think Michael may have had a conversation with a council member a little bit, but it was mostly just should I be there and should I not.
Yeah.
So I don't know that she had any opinions.
All right. Okay. Okay, with that, I'll close public hearing and open it up for the commission to discuss. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. Rebuttal time. Is there anything that you'd like to say in rebuttal to the public comments? Sorry about that. You've got about 5 minutes left on your clock. Thank you, Mr. for the reminder.
There we go. No specific rebuttal. I believe the mitigation plans that we put forth should satisfy both, the commission as well as our neighbors to the east. I was just wondering how much of the erosion that they've experienced was actually in the development of the property, because I know Horry and Smith had to move a ton of dirt, prior to, and actually Horry and Smith developed their property and our property. So I know there was a lot of grading that happened, and I just wonder if the majority of that erosion that our east side neighbors are mentioning happened prior to having all the bioretention ponds and all the stormwater measures that Horry and Smith had to put in place. That's the only thing I'd have.
Okay, thank you. All right. With that, now I will close public hearing and open it up for the commission to discuss.
So I just want to make a point of clarification, just to understand what we're voting on. So there is a notice of non-compliance, but ultimately, my understanding is they're asking now for a variance. So if we approve the variance, the notice of non-compliance would kind of be null and void at this point. Is that exactly what we're being asked to vote on?
Yeah, well, yeah, you focus on the variance and we'll figure out the notice of violation.
Good.
Appreciate it.
I'd like to go back to the stream determination. Stone, if you could help me with that. So currently on your map is the current indication of this being a blue line stream with our...
No, actually that is the indicator of there being a channel there. The hydrologic determination performed in 2016 did classify the conveyance as a stream, and that's what the grading plans were designed around. They did hire somebody to perform a determination as part of this process because it was determined to be a wet weather conveyance. Then we could go back and it would not apply a buffer. However, upon submittal of that hydrologic determination to TDEC, TDEC did decide it was a stream as was originally decided. So our stream layer, as any of you know who have looked at it on a regular basis, is not the most accurate. That's why we do go ahead and require those hydrologic determinations as part of the development process.
And just so the commission understands, we have 3 hydraulic determination studies, one from Gresham Smith early on, one from GEOS, and then one from the state. Do you know, can we see what those scores were? I know there was a slide a minute ago.
I think it said 21, then 18, and then 20.5. As a qualified hydrologic professional, I will say that scoring out urban streams is an adventure unto itself, because a lot of these categories were based on streams in their more natural condition, which this one was not. But
Right.
primarily, I think what they would have used to call it a stream was a almost year-round presence of water.
Yeah, it's when we have varying opinions of determinations, and I'm looking at Ms. Camp here, that
That's why we
gives me a
wanted
little
to
bit
make
of
sure it
trouble.
went to TDEC. And TDEC is the ultimate source. They're the one who developed the methodology. And when they call it a stream, we all call it a stream. So I don't think we're arguing anymore as to whether or not it's a stream. We're just arguing maybe to how big a stream it is.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
So I have a question. You said that you all have gone ahead and tried to mitigate by placing 250 plants, correct? Can you speak to,
Yes.
are those natives or not?
Yes, they are. Yes, they are. That's based on Robert's proposal in the non-compliance. And we haven't done that yet. We're going to wait till after the hearing to hopefully get a variance. But we've in the deck, a more comprehensive deck, you'll see the actual plants and the different areas.
Okay.
Yeah, there we go. Thank you.
Thanks, Rebecca.
Yeah, that's where the conveyance is, and then we have two additional drawings. There, that's inside the Mott's backyard, fenced-in backyard, and this is the area it's behind my house on the other side of the stream.
All right. Has this been shared with Metro staff?
Yes.
For approval?
Yes, it has been shared.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does staff have, well, go ahead.
No, I just want, and also on the trees that were cut down, they were all diseased. We had an arborist come down because we've had 4 trees to fall in our neighborhood because they're diseased or dead. So that's why the total of 5 trees were cut down, because we had 4 actually to fall. And we had an arborist come out and evaluate them.
Does Metro staff have any comments on the plan for plantings?
Josh, did your group review the plans? Sure.
I'm Josh Hayes. I'm over the section. I work under Michael Hunt, so you all deal with Michael all the time. But Michael has been in contact with Mr. Lucas, and he has reviewed the plantings. To us, it comes down, we can't give the approval, especially to leave the impervious structure. So it all depends on if the variance is granted, and then we would work with Mr. Lucas to make sure the planting plans are approved. Anything?
Thank you. Yep.
Has anybody looked at calculations to see if this added impervious changes compliance from a stormwater treatment perspective? Or has this all only been limited to there being an impervious area in the buffer?
Not to my knowledge. I haven't. You're seeing if it was in accordance with the original LID.
If it had been shown originally,
Yeah.
is there enough water quality on site to offset it?
Yeah, I don't know that we've looked at that, honestly.
And then I know y'all mentioned you had no problems, but we saw videos of water just rushing through that fence is blocking. So the fence gives me a lot of concern, and just generally what was happening. It was hard to tell from the video other than a bunch of damming of water coming back. So I'm not sure if you can speak more to that. And then what the little block of impervious is that I guess is behind your neighbor's house is not here. It's just a little square. So his seems to be a lot less severe than the one on the left. It's just some little pad. The one on the left is fully built out.
the source there is a pipe that's goes uphill to the west, and we can determine the original source of that pipe. Kind of the start of that, right there. In this area, if you don't know, we've never had it go above above that rock line because of it. And then there's pipe underneath the street, and that street is also in the buffer zone.
Well, the buffer breaks since it's piped, and the buffers were clearly labeled on all the plans, the HOA documents that you included. If that pipe were connected, then the buffer on the left essentially goes away. But I don't know why they didn't extend it. I don't know if TDEC said no, or... And so it just brings up a lot of questions, and to hear the statement that Roy Dale didn't have any issues with it, I mean, he clearly would have known otherwise, so I don't know if that's accurate or not.
Yeah. He suggested that we go get a new HD. That was kind of his advice to us. We had several conversations with him.
And the HD got turned down.
Well, no, that's correct. Yeah, we looked on your website and hired their appropriate firm, Geos, and then they came out and scored it in 18. Then they submitted to TDEC, and TDEC did not concur. I don't think the Motts or I would have actually bought these homes if we knew we couldn't do anything in the fenced-in area, because we were led to believe that fenced-in area, since it's up to us to maintain it, we can do anything with the fenced-in area since it's a limited common element. I mean, you can see the Motts. It goes up to their house.
Was mow and maintain included in the original plan for that backyard? Do we know, or was the intent for it to grow wild up to the back door?
It was the intent for it to be a water quality unmaintained buffer. As we've mentioned before, we would like buffers on our buffers, but so far hasn't been possible.
My backyard, we had significant water, running from my neighbor through my backyard, and that's when we put built out our backyard. On our fence line, we put rock, and so now we have no issues with running water.
I think the thing that, it's unfortunate because I did look at Metro GIS and I didn't see anything. So as the homeowner, the HOA docs only govern so much. I mean, this is, to me, something the HOA should have noted in the bylaws and what you can do. I guess outside of that, the mitigation plan, you waived the right or waived having to have a landscape architect or a licensed engineer. I just feel like there's a lack of information to not only, I understand that you weren't privy to this and how that dissemination maybe of information didn't trickle down to the homeowner, but were there trees in the planning plan? I think that the mitigation, it would be helpful to have an engineer or landscape architect, a professional, be able to comment on what you're proposing as well.
And we'd be happy to do that.
To kind of build on that, just looking at the plan and also what it's mitigating for, I don't know that it really, I think the lower naturalized kind of plantings that are along the creek are a good addition. I think that will improve the condition there. I think the thing that you're kind of not necessarily addressing is the loss of the canopy trees, and it's hard now to for us to look at it any other way than they were lost, other than, you mentioned they were diseased and that sort of thing, but I think we just have to look at the canopy loss and the the loss of that root structure and kind of what it does in that kind of buffer. And I think it doesn't really seem that the mitigation plan necessarily addresses that right now in terms of trying to replace for the loss of that canopy that I think would benefit the whole buffer zone long term and kind of the way that it needs to function. So I do think that it's something that's not necessarily included right now that should be further addressed.
My concern is that every tree we've had in that common area has either fell or was diseased. So I don't know if it was a process of developing the area. I'm not sure. I mean, I'm not an arborist or
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned there's a lot of land disturbance in there, and there are tree protection requirements that need to occur, but it doesn't keep people from going against them. That then negatively impacts it, and they look fine for a few years, and then down the road is when they're impacted. I do think that it's important whenever you do mitigation plantings to make sure that they're planted correctly and in the right soil and in the right structure, so that you do have that long-term vitality of them, and then you get all the benefits of them at the same time. Yeah.
I feel like, based on the comments of my fellow commissioners and what I see, the request for the variance is disturbance of the zone 1 buffer with impervious structures. We don't know the square footage of that and how much area has been impacted. The mitigation plan, you're asking, like you just verbally said, you'd be fine to engage with an engineer and landscape architect, but part of the variance request is to not have an engineer or landscape architect prepare the plans. So I feel like there's some disconnects and we don't have enough information available in what's presented before us to, really say, are you all doing enough to grant a variance or not? With the mitigation plan, we don't have enough information on the impervious structures. We don't know what the mowing and maintenance plan would be moving forward, and those things help protect that wet water conveyance. Regardless of whose hydrologic determination you look at, it sounds like it's above the threshold. So it is something that needs to be protected. Maybe of note is that maybe we need to do a better job with Metro GIS and, putting the stream buffers on the parcel viewers so that, homeowners, even if it's not conveyed by the developer or the HOA, you can do your due diligence before you do a project. But we have to rule on hardship. And that's one of the challenges here. Like, lack of knowledge is not a hardship. Financial constraints is not a hardship. So I think without more information, it would be hard for us to really provide a variance on this. So I think we need to decide what the next steps are.
And then on the landscape, Chair, is just dealing with Sunrise. They've been here for 40 years. We thought that was sufficient, but obviously,
Yeah.
you're saying this.
No, that's not. So it sounds like we might be headed towards a deferral. There's a couple pieces that will be helpful in that deferral for you to come back with. The one was by Commissioner Fulmer in reviewing the existing or the original design and the LID. There may be capacity in that to handle the little impervious that's been added for the buffer. We do need a mitigation plan, as Ms. Camp has mentioned, and it may be helpful to get TDEC, GEOS together and talk about their findings with the HD. It's just for us to grant you one way or another. We can certainly deny it based on what we see here, but I'd like to give you the opportunity to come back with more certain information. And the existing LID may be helpful to you. Oftentimes they're designed a little more capacity.
Can I get confirmation? Is the impervious surfaces all within the zone 1 buffer that is being requested as part of the variance?
There is no zone 2.
It's just, okay.
It's not big enough.
Big enough, just, okay, thank you.
And just to clarify too, when we were talking about LID, that's where an engineer will look at the existing design. I don't know how much, sometimes there's these acronyms thrown out and it's very confusing, but that's where a registered professional engineer can look at the design that was done originally and make that determination and give us that information.
Then Vice Sheriff Fulmer, you said if the two pipes were connected behind, could you explain that one?
Well, so if you look at the maps, there's a break in the buffer where the driveway is. Well, if it's piped the whole way over, then it's a piped stream, and unless I'm mistaken, Logan, where it's piped, there's no buffer. No, I think it's highly unlikely it would be approved to pipe to the east. But on the west side, that's one way where if it's a closed conduit, it might, unless Gabriel's about to tell me I'm wrong.
Mr. Harp, you're recognized.
Not expecting to speak today, but I had previous worked on this project back when I was at Metro before, and I can speak to that point specifically. So there was an existing pipe there, Mr. Fulmer, that was there pre-developed conditions. So the determination was it's encapsulated, no buffer through the encapsulated area. So there was no permitting for encapsulating that portion of the project. That's why they ran the road through there, because it was already encapsulated. So that may give you a little clarity on the confusion there.
So if you further encapsulate it, does the buffer go away where it's piped?
They would have needed to get a variance from you to do that.
Which is a pretty,
Which, I'd be, it is one thing that is worth looking into. TDEC is pretty stringent. They're the ones, Metro Water would have to approve it and TDEC would have to approve it. But
and we would have to approve it.
So, would you like to defer?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. So with that, we'll see you in a month or two.
I can't wait.
Yep. I'm sorry. My brain today is foggy. We'll need a motion to defer, so I'll ask if any of the commissioners would introduce that.
Motion to defer.
It's a motion by Fulmer. Is there a second? Second. Mr. Oliver, all in favor? Or excuse me, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
You're going to do one
opposed?
meeting, or because the next meeting, I'm sorry to interrupt, but the next meeting is going to be,
Not feasible.
Yeah, the next meeting will be
Next
too
week.
fast. Yeah.
it's going to be very fast, so maybe you want to,
There's a June 5th meeting and
let's just put on the record when the next meeting will be so that the participants are aware of the next meeting. So,
Okay.
June 5th would be the meeting after.
are you able to get your documents, you think, by June 5th?
Okay. Sorry, okay. Yeah. Okay. All right, so June 5th. Is the
In
deferral.
terms of follow-up, because I'm not an expert here, should I follow up with Logan and Richard on the details on my action items that I need?
Yeah.
With Logan, yes.
Yeah,
Okay,
keep in touch.
thank you.
Yeah.
We need the help. Thanks.
Great. All righty. Thank you. All right. Moving on. Next case, getting back to the original agenda sequence. Let me pull that up. This works. Coral Place, 5909 A and B Coral Place. So the applicant can come to the front here and get situated while Logan introduces the case.
Case number 2 on the agenda is case 2025-00003, 5909 A and B Carl Place. At 5909 A and B Carl Place, APNs are 091063R, 00100C0, and 091063R, 00200C0. Inspector is Development Services, Council District 20, Roland Horton. Applicant's request for finished floor elevations to remain at 418.5 feet above sea level, NAVD 88, 3.3 feet above base flood elevation of 415.2 feet above sea level, NAVD 88. Appellant is Jordan Lee, JCL Construction, represented by John Hood, RLS. Comments, Stormwater staff. Staff does not support the requested variance. Prior to the issuance of any building permit, the contractor was supplied the floodplain requirements indicating the required elevation/floodplain criteria. If the criteria is granted, this site will be designated by FEMA as non-compliant with Metro's floodplain management requirements. Codes, no comment provided. Planning, no comment provided. Greenways is not requesting a greenway or greenway easement.
Okay, great. I know the applicant has been here before. Would you like for me to rehash the procedure, or do you know the 10 minutes? Okay, all right. With that, I'll let you introduce yourself, and I'll start the 10-minute clock after.
I'm Jordan Lee, JCL Construction. I was here last month. I got deferred to figure out if it's even possible to lift these houses.
I can introduce myself. I'm Robert Holland. I'm an attorney representing the owners, and I'm with Butler Snow here in Nashville.
Sorry about that. So I went and met with a guy named Mr. Toothman, and he gave me a quote to lift a house, had conversations with him if he's ever done a house like this that's 4 stories that are connected. It's actually 2 houses. He said he's done like a couple, not often. So he did give me a quote. It's about $90,000. He did give a quote. I know he's got a job that going on with a current client of mine, where he's moving an old mansion, a historical mansion, 2 miles on a farm. Okay. And that is roughly a little bit over 100,000. So I asked him the question of, why is this lifting up a foot 90 grand, and that one you're moving a historical house 2 miles, a little bit over 100,000, which seems like significant work, more work than what I have to do. And his answer was the risk of lifting a 4-story building with adjacent houses around it is more than him moving a house 2 miles on a farmland, which raised a red flag to me and concerns of not only just anything structural damage on lifting these 4 houses, also if something does go wrong and these houses fall on adjacent neighbors, and then I wouldn't say ruin the lives of our neighbors, but we come into the lives of their neighbors of causing issues and being a nuisance in their lives, when in fact the way the houses are built right now, there's no nuisance in the neighborhood at all. The quote came out with everything else we're probably about $140,000 to fix to get it to, I guess, the correct elevation per the Metro Water stormwater document. I'll let you.
The only thing I'd like to add is, thanks to legal counsel, I was given a copy of the Precision Motors case, and I looked at the variance standard. And it says in there that there has to be a showing of good and sufficient cause, a determination that the failure to grant the variance would result in exceptional hardship, and determination that the granting of the variance will not result in increased flood heights, additional threats to public safety, or extraordinary public expense. And based on what Mr. Lee said, I think there's a balancing test here as to what's the risk by raising a house that's basically 2 houses next to houses that have been there for a long, long time. And it's still, if we don't raise it, it's still 3.5 feet above the floodplain, which most of the houses are sitting on the ground. So, and it's in an area where we've had tornadoes, we've had high winds, we've had all these things. So nobody's really sure of the structural integrity of this. Now, what was the gentleman's name? Toothman says everything will be fine, but do we really know? So if you're balancing a risk here, what's the bigger risk to the neighborhood, which is the flood risk as a factor because it's 3.5 feet instead of 4 feet versus the fact that you've taken a house and you've raised it 6 inches, or 2 houses with an adjoining wall and you raise it 6 inches. And I don't think any of us really know what that risk entails and what the future holds. So, and look, as a lawyer, I completely understand the standards and the reviews and the rules that y'all apply. And I'm not saying we haven't maybe misstepped here, but I do think from a comparative analysis, it's something the committee ought to consider.
All right, you've got about 6 minutes left. Anything else to add?
I would ask, and thanks, Mr. Bowman, that the property owner submitted, it was late Friday, some pictures and a note or a letter for the committee to consider. So I hope that got to y'all's files. So.
Okay. All right, I'll reserve the time. I'll close the applicant's presentation. Logan, did we receive any other messages?
No, just the messages from the applicant, which may not have got to you, but they're in the folder there. I see Rebecca looking at them. I think there's a video maybe or two.
Go ahead.
There was a video from comparing during the high waters that we had recently, the location of Carl Place, and I think the other video is from Green Hills. So.
Okay.
It's thinking about it. That's not it.
It goes without saying that's the new house in the neighborhood.
Okay. Anything else that we received, Logan, to consider?
No, there's nothing else from the community or council people.
All right. Is anybody here to speak in favor or against? You can raise your hand. Seeing none. Okay. I'll close public hearing and open it up to the commission for discussion. I guess I'll kick it off by saying if the house is left in the current state, would FEMA insure the property?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
They actually had someone buy the left unit. They had insurance, and then we ended up having to buy it back because we couldn't get a UNO.
Okay. Thank you.
We had robust discussion, I think, last meeting on this, and based on my reading, I didn't find an exceptional hardship, and I won't go into the same reasons. Last time, I think that was on the record. At that time, I even moved to deny the request. And I appreciate that we did some additional due diligence to understand what it would take to move the house, but it hasn't changed my overall opinion on this particular matter.
Okay. I just want to say I was not at the last meeting, but I have watched the video, and, I appreciate the consideration of the transfer of risk that you brought up and the comparative risk, but that's not, something that we rule on as part of the determination. And I appreciate Roger's comments about, part of the reason we have the ordinance in place and the rules. I will also say that I'm fairly familiar with the structural moving community and the work that they do, and they've done some pretty amazing stuff. So the financial hardship to elevate, I don't think qualifies as the hardship that we have to rule on. And it, the presentation by of the, proposal by Mr. Toothman and his company to elevate the house, while there is some risk, they do have to maintain pretty significant insurance. to do those operations. And so you have demonstrated by providing that proposal and doing your due diligence that it is a feasible option. It is not a trivial option in terms of the finances, but elevating the house is feasible. That may mean that affects the price of the house. I think one thing that came up in the last meeting was about the survey being wrong. And due diligence on that survey side is not a hardship, or lack of due diligence on the survey is not what I consider a hardship for the house not being in compliance. And it does affect our standing with FEMA, which we have to consider as part of the risk also.
Yeah, the only thing that's new from this presentation from the last that I recall is the estimate for raising the house. I think in our last meeting we had discussed the feasibility of that being possible, and that's why you've come back to us with that information. And so it's good to hear that it's possible. We often do not grant variances for this same scenario, and I think since you can get it is insurable through FEMA's guidelines, it's not within Metro's guidelines. We're 4 feet above. I can't really support it, me personally, but I'll let the commissioners make the motion.
I would move to deny the request for a variance from the floor elevations of Metro's regulations.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded. Any discussion? Okay. With that, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none. Any abstained? Seeing none. Okay. Motion carries as a. Oh. Thought you were just soft-spoken as. Okay. 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 All right. Motion's denied. Sorry about that. Okay. All right. Next item on the agenda is, let me make sure I get this right. I've made enough mistakes today, Logan. B&A, airport. Oh, no, sorry. Look, I made a mistake. Sorry, airport team. Northgate Business Parkway. As a shorter list of requests, we always welcome that. 1209 Northgate Business Parkway. The applicant come to the front here while Logan introduces the case.
Case number 3 on the agenda is case 2025-00004, 1209 Northgate Business Parkway at 1209 Northgate Business Parkway. APN is 034-1100-3200. Inspector is Development Services, Council District 9, Tanya Hancock. Applicant's request for finished floor elevation to remain at 431.91 above sea level, NAVD 88, 0.6 feet 1 above base flood elevation of 431.3 above sea level, NAVD 88. Appellant is Wendell Waller, represented by Greg Mayo. Comments, Stormwater staff. Staff does not support the requested variance. Prior to the issuance of any building permit, the contractor was supplied the floodplain requirements, indicating the required elevations/floodplain criteria. The applicant should consider draft floodproofing the existing structure to the proper elevation to meet FEMA requirements. Codes, no comment provided. Planning, no comment provided. Greenways is not requesting a greenway or greenway easement.
Okay, great. You'll have 10 minutes to present. And are you pretty familiar with the procedure at this point? Okay. All right. So with that, I'll let you introduce yourselves, and I'll start the 10-minute clock after. Okay.
Thank you. My name is Greg Mayo. I'm the architect for the project. I'm also here with Luke Randolph, who represents the contractor, and the building owner Wendell Waller, is also present in the meeting. This project was damaged during the December 2023 tornado. It was not a new development building. It's an existing building that was damaged during that tornado event. We were under the impression at that time that the project would be grandfathered in under city requirements because of the storm structure, the storm damage structure. The building was subsequently demolished down to the existing slab and then rebuilt from there. There was no additional site work done, no additional impervious area added. It was just basically a build back on top of the existing slab. We did have, the building was originally built in around 1998, obviously prior to previous floodplain elevation changes. So that's what we were just going back on over that existing slab. The owner has maintained since his ownership of the building FEMA flood insurance on the building. That is in place and has been in place since his ownership. We did have the building pad surveyed at Metro Water's request, and we are approximately about 5 inches below that required elevation. So it's within that, it's less than a foot, less than 6 inches, really variance different from the required elevation. So that's our request. Since it was an existing building that was rebuilt from the tornado damage from that event. Thank you.
Okay. You have about 6 minutes left, so I'll reserve that if needed. Okay. Is there anybody here to speak in favor or against? Oh, all right. Yes, please. Always welcome our friends from Parks and Greenways. If you would mind hitting the green button there, Mr. Diaz.
Again, good morning. I'm David Diaz-Brigg. I work with Metro Parks Greenways Division. And just for clarification, Greenways does have a request for a greenway easement, a standard floodway 75-foot Zone 1 and Zone 2 buffers. On the Parks and Greenways master plan, which is part of Plan to Play, we do have a shown greenway proposed or planned for this particular, it's a Dry Creek route. So I don't know how that got lost in the mix. I think the condition was entered, approved with conditions in City Works, and I think we transmitted that information to Stormwater. So again, I don't know how that got lost in the mix, but just want to make clear that we are requesting, or Greenways is requesting a greenway easement.
Okay, great. So that was not recorded in the documents for the project. Is that what you're saying?
Well, what I'm saying, sir, is that it is in the in City Works, where we make an entry. It's approved with conditions, and then we make a note there as to the condition, and it does request the greenway.
Okay.
We also transmitted that information via email. So again, I don't know how it was lost in the mix.
Okay.
I apologize. Yeah.
Was that easement part of the building permit, or I'm very confused of when the greenway easement, was that part of when they came in for the building permit that Greenways and Parks requested that, or is it part of this?
It's part of this request. I don't know that, unless it was like a planning application, or I don't know that Greenways would have a sign off on a building permit. So they're making the request now to get a greenway easement.
So basically we have a request for a variance to maintain the floor elevations, but Greenway is stating that they would like, to the extent we were to vote to approve that they would, they want a potential condition to have an easement for a greenway. Is that the request?
That's
okay.
And the location is?
It would be the 75-foot floodway buffer.
Okay.
Do y'all have a problem giving an easement in the back in the woods?
It's
No, ownership has no issue granting an easement.
Okay. I'll have to go back in my order.
The area is wooded back there, so it's not usable property for the developer.
Okay, we'll have that recorded. I need to ask you, Logan, also, did we receive any other notices on this case?
No, there were no notices on this case.
All right, so with that, I'll close public hearing and open it up for discussion. And just so I make sure I understood that the entire building, so more than 50% of the building was demolished and built back. Is that correct? Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Can you, I can see, but can you confirm the actual use for us of the building?
It's storage warehouse.
Only in any office?
There's like a 1,100 square foot office that's built out inside the warehouse, but it's just an office that serves the warehouse function.
Similar to our last case, I know prior to construction, Metro, I think in the last case, provided the exact elevations. Did that happen in this, for this particular matter?
Yes, it did. It was by an email exchange between Mr. Mayo and Mr. Randolph and I. We didn't require the development in the floodplain form like you saw in the last case, but I gave the exact elevation that they needed to meet. And there just wasn't a survey. I don't think there was a survey done really until the end, after it was constructed.
Yeah, so if it's over 50%, that constitutes a major.
But these were treated, I know back in the 2020 tornado, building permits were issued expedited in an expedited manner just to rebuild natural disaster. This one was a different year, different circumstance, but still a natural disaster. So they needed floodplain and grading approval. You gave them a future elevation, but there wasn't, I don't think, the robust plan review as if they were intentionally.
Right, we were not, oh, I'm sorry.
No, is that, I'm just trying to.
Yeah, we were not required to go through stormwater through grading because it was just a rebuild on the existing slab. So we went through all the checklists of all the city departments and we got all those approvals, and there wasn't a grading sign off that needed to be done. Stormwater had to do it, but and
there
water.
wasn't a grading permit or anything associated with this.
We just built right back, but nobody shot the slab.
Yeah.
To begin with.
It was a condition that they meet a certain elevation, give us a certain elevation certificate.
So I have a question, because you mentioned that 6 inches below the 1 foot elevation required above base flood elevation.
5 inches, so roughly 5
Okay, but the building was built in 1998, and the ordinance of Metro for the 4 foot freeboard was put in 79. So it's residential. So do we not have, I'm trying to remember, where are we at on commercial?
Commercial is required to be 1 foot above.
Like, yeah, so they were not in compliance potentially
Well, the
when
flood
it was
elevation
built.
could have changed. I mean, no, I don't know the.
But the 1 foot has been there for a long
It might not
time.
have been mapped, or it might have been mapped at a lower elevation.
True.
Yeah.
So I guess my question's for Roger, like, what is your perspective on this? Because they're 6 inches below, it's commercial, industrial.
And I'm not certain that what the conditions were
When it
behind
was built.
establishing the original elevation. But the notion that a project would be grandfathered, I think is not substantiated anywhere. Because to the contrary, that if a structure is damaged, demolished, flooded, burned down, blown away by a tornado, then you're subject to FEMA's substantial improvement or substantial damage requirements that says that if you do experience that kind of damage, then you've got to bring the facility into compliance with the current standards. And relative to maps and flood levels and things like that, we're constantly working on maps. I'm not certain when the last modification to that map might have changed base flood elevation in that location, but
I guess my rebuttal to that is if that was a requirement, then wouldn't grading had to be one of the sign-off requirements, because we would have had to regrade the site, build the site up, and that wasn't a checkoff that we had to do.
I don't work in development services. Steve,
We've
you want
renovated some buildings in floodplains before where we just raised the thresholds or did flood-proof doors lower. But as long as the perimeter of the building is protected, then that's the way that you meet the ordinance. And so in looking at it, it seems like the front's block. That seems simple, but it's hard to tell around the sides. Is it just metal facade?
Right.
If water went up, would it
So-
infiltrate in?
Good question. So of course, the site slopes back down toward the creek bed. The loading dock, which is along the back of the building there, the back parking lot, is 4 feet above that grade elevation because it's a 4-foot loading dock.
But
The wall,
matches finished for the office component in the front,
it does, but the walls around are concrete block walls 12 feet high on all 4 sides of the
They
building.
go up 12 feet. So it seems that there's ways, people do flood walls all the time. People do different things you can install if the floods are coming. You can leave the structure low and flood-proof the building. And so there might be a retrofit that you can do that protects those enclosures to where you satisfy the 1-foot freeboard. You wouldn't need flood insurance forever.
Okay, we can, we'll proceed whatever the board has, will grant.
I'd like to recognize Mr. Mishu while he's patiently.
Thank you. Steve Mishu, once again, Development Services. So in a 20-year-old building, the grandfathering that we talk about is that we're not going to look at a new elevation and retroactively go tell somebody who's been occupying a building with no significant redevelopment that they have to come back and raise their building. So if you have an existing building and it was to our criteria at one time, we will allow them to continue to keep on trucking along on that criteria. If a natural disaster happens, whether it's a tornado or if their building catches on fire, as bad as it may sound, we would allow somebody build back in place, even if it was in the buffer, but to the right elevation. So that was the kind of the benefits that we did for like the tornado damage several years ago, is that we said, hey, we'll allow you to rebuild back in the same footprint, buffer or no buffer, but you have to build to the right elevation. So the time that our buffer or the new elevations will kick in is unfortunately a natural disaster or a development that triggers the criteria as far as a 50% improvement to the interior or a 25% floor area or a 25% impervious area. That's when we would say during the building permit stage, hey, these are the elevation requirements that you'd have to provide. So while there's not really a grading permit review, there's actually a grading and a floodplain sign off on the building permit, which Logan would relay to the applicant that these are the elevations that you have to provide. And I think you guys caught on to it, but just in case, the big difference between this case and the previous case is that we have a mechanism for dry flood proofing for non-residential developments, which we did not for residential. I don't think FEMA acknowledges that, neither do we. Yeah. So that's the big difference is that this is a non-residential, and that's why there's a option for dry flood proofing.
To take that one step further, are there any provisions for industrial use, or is it just viewed as commercial?
It's either residential or non-residential.
Or non-residential. Okay. Okay. Thank you.
And I've got the original grading plans pulled up. The flood elevation in 1998 was 430.8. And it looks like the finished floor was, on these plans, was supposed to be built to 432 above sea level. Yeah, but there was also datum changes between those times. I don't know exactly what that would have been. Yeah, they're at 431.9, so the 10th difference, I think. Right? But the flood elevation has increased since that time.
So, similar to the other case, there was an email that went out with elevations, and or was that attached to the building permit then with sign off from Steve? Is that what you're saying as a notation?
Yeah, it's a condition on the building permit. And there was also an email sent out.
So I definitely see that there are steps that Metro tries to kind of warning, in terms of drawing that information. But I also do believe, unlike the last case, there is a hardship that the use, the tornado, I'm inclined to support if there is, and I'm not quite sure on the dry, what Steve had mentioned, if there is something that can be done. Because again, this is goods, not people, right? In this location.
I mean, you know, if there had never been a tornado, we wouldn't be here. So,
which is a hardship. Definitely.
Shmishu.
So the requirement is you have to build non-residential to 1 foot above, and that would be either through elevating or dry flood proofing too. And the dry flood proofing too would ensure that if you did get a flood of 100-year plus one, that essentially the building would remain undamaged, and that maybe they're just washing down a wall and they're back in business again versus having to replace carpets, tile, drywall, or something to that nature. So if they would have came to us and said, hey, in lieu of elevation, we want to dry flood proof to that amount, we would have considered it. But the requirement is still the same, is that it's the 100-year plus 1 foot for non-residential.
I just want to, I think where I'm not familiar with dry proofing, flood proofing. So is there someone who can, is that where it was raising the doors and or some type of waterproofing application?
Yeah, it's if the water went up on the door those 4 or 5 inches, it can't get in the building.
So
there's little things that you can slip in. You could raise the pad right at the entry and then ramp down in the building at the front. It's easier, the loading docks is the hard part. And so there's things that you can slide down that are basically barriers that you can install and uninstall. Just the building owner can do it if that storm event is coming to protect their building. And you have little gasketed connections. And it's basically like a temporary levee.
So that's something that the owner could do now to meet that requirement, since it's constructed.
That is staff's recommendation today, is to either elevate or dry flood proof. I will note that if they choose to meet compliance rather than getting a variance, either by elevation or by flood proofing, then we have no mechanism to help Parks out with an easement, because then they're doing everything by right, and they'd have to go a different route to get an easement. Not that I think that should sway your vote, because this is Stormwater Management Commission, but then they would be meeting the intent of the building permit application.
Right.
So I understand some of the challenges here. Elevating the structure is a little bit different than the prior case. I personally like the idea of flood proofing the structure, and I think something we could do is grant a variance with the condition that they work with Metro to get proper dry proofing in place and approve it, and do the greenways easement as kind of a concession for not being in compliance, but working to get in compliance with the dry proofing.
But they would need the variance to. The variance would be not to do anything.
Correct. If they dry flood proof, then they meet that is something that they're able to do without the commission.
If I were them, I'd just withdraw.
Or if we did deny it, then it sounds like they still have the potential option to comply with the regulations and code as written. You know, looking at this one, I appreciate Commissioner Abbott's comments. I think that she was looking at some of the variance considerations, which is danger to life and property. And I do appreciate that the commercial may be a little bit different as it relates to life in a flood situation. However, when I look at our variance considerations and the exceptional hardship, for me, don't think that we've met kind of what I would expect to see. As I sit here and I listen to my other commissioners who are very, very intelligent, it seems like there is the ability to comply. It may not be convenient, but there is an ability. So for that reason, I would move to deny the request.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second? Okay. All right, no second. Should you withdraw your motion? Or, well, no, okay. Is there a
Can
motion?
it can just die. I'll
It
withdraw.
died.
She just wants
It
it
died
to
on its
perish.
own.
Okay, no, there's no second, right? Nobody's
Yeah.
seconding. Okay,
Yeah.
so that motion fails.
I know that we don't want to defer a bunch of cases, but at the same time, in the event that the dry floodproofing can't be executed, it's worth giving them an opportunity to look into it and telling us why.
Have you looked at, yep.
And so I don't know if, y'all would want to defer to get that opportunity where you wouldn't have to start over in the event that it.
Well, if we, since I understand, so if we can comply with some dry floodproofing, it's a non-issue. It wouldn't have to.
Yeah, I don't know if you just tie in some blocks and have grooves where you slide those things in just for 6 inches on the back docks. And, there are doors that you can make that lock that keep the water from coming in.
Right.
You can elevate the pad.
Right. Right. We'll investigate it.
So is that
That's a deferral.
Sounds like they're open to it.
Yes. Are you wanting to defer?
We would rather not defer. We would rather have a no vote to bring it in compliance or approval of the variance, if that's an option.
They could withdraw their variance requests, correct?
Well, we could, go ahead, Mr. Plaid.
Yes, you can withdraw your variance request. I guess what they're trying to say is, well, I'll let someone on the board explain it to you better, since that's not my purview.
You want us to vote yes or no, we can do that. We were just giving you a chance to go and look and say if it's infeasible to actually execute the dry floodproofing, then that might change our vote. But from the way that I'm seeing everybody speaking, it sounds like everybody's going to vote no.
Okay, so if we come back and evaluate and say, okay, we can do the flood proofing, then it's a non-issue
You wouldn't
essentially.
have to come back to us.
Right.
Okay.
But if you go and investigate it and you say, actually, here are the reasons it can't happen, and here's the reason we can't pour 6 inches of concrete on top of the existing slab, then that could change some people's opinions potentially, but I don't know. I can't guarantee that.
Well, I mean, I think at this point, we would want to evaluate to look at the flood proofing, because I mean, we don't want to waste this board's additional time as well as ours.
I
And
hate
so
to
we
vote
want to.
no, you can't execute the flood proofing, and then you're starting over to come back.
Right.
So a deferral allows you to investigate, and then you can withdraw if you decide that flood proofing makes sense and you don't need to come before the board.
Understood.
The flood proofing is a permissible approach to bringing it into compliance.
Sure.
The notion of pouring a half-inch slab elevation for a building that's already completed, that's a big undertaking. The fact that you can, and there are companies that do flood proofing, so they can design enclosures around doorways, entryways, things like that. We have a number of facilities in Nashville that have been flood proofed. When you flood proof a building, you actually, instead of us having to file an elevation certificate on that structure, what we do is file a flood proofing certificate. And then once a year, we do an inspection to make sure that you still have your gates that go in front of doorways and things like that. And so that's a fairly common thing too. It's Josh's. Yeah, we have a group that goes out and just does the quick inspection every year. There are a couple of really odd cases. We had a structure over on the east bank of the Cumberland in downtown Nashville. The property had changed hands, and all the floodgates disappeared. And those are very costly, specially prepared, specially fabricated gates. And nobody ever found those floodgates. So that's an easy way to create a compliant structure without causing a significant reconstruction effort.
And you mentioned that if they do that, then they aren't required to carry insurance through FEMA. Did I hear that correctly, or no?
For insurance?
Yeah, I was just curious if that could be a future cost saving. They would still have to. Okay, sorry, I misunderstood.
So are you clear on what your options are right now? Okay. Are you interested in deferring?
Motion Motion to defer.
All right, we have motion to second? Seconded. Any other discussion? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, deferred. I did it again. I didn't set a date.
No.
Well, in this case, we don't really need to because they're going to.
You don't really necessarily need to set a date. I mean, what you would infer from that is that it's the next date. The reason why this is a little dicey is because our next date is coming up really quickly because this is a special called meeting. In most circumstances, the next date would be a clean 30 days.
Right.
Here, it's going to be more like 15 or something, right, Logan? So I'm not sure if that's enough time. And really, I just want it put on the record for notice. So if anyone's watching, they've already mailed out notices that they're having this today. So we want people to be able to track it. Most of the time, the default is the next meeting. You didn't do anything wrong, but the next meeting is actually very short. And so I don't know how long it takes to have someone come out and look at what you guys have advised. Okay.
But
So
you
Logan.
can defer again administratively, I would think.
You can, but I don't like that because of the paper trail. I would prefer there to be an adequate public notice, and so I would prefer that it be announced on the record. And if it works out, he can always reach out to staff, and you guys never see him again, right? Because he would end up withdrawing. So, Logan, the next date is June
5th.
June 5th.
Does that work for you? Okay. All right. Deferred till June 5th. Okay. Thank you. All right. Going on hour 2. Anybody need a break?
Yes, please.
Yes. Okay. We'll take a 5-minute break or so and see you all back here at about 10:10. hopefully land this meeting on time for its end. So with that, I'll call the April 21st Stormwater Management Commission meeting back to order. And the next item on our agenda is on the screen here, the BNA Central Ramp expansion. If the applicant can come to the desk, I'll have Logan introduce the case.
Case number 4 on the agenda is case 2025-00007, BNA Central Ramp Expansion at 1 Terminal Drive. APN is 107-0000500. Inspector is MPDES, Council District 13, Russ Bradford. Applicant's request for stream encapsulation. Appellant is Metro Nashville Airport Authority, represented by Tracy Holton. Comments, stormwater staff, no comment provided. Codes, no comment provided. Planning, no comment provided. Greenways is not requesting a greenway or greenway easement.
Okay, with that, I know the applicant's been here before. Do you understand the process? Is that correct? Okay, all right, so I'll give you a 10-minute timer and start the clock after the introductions.
Good morning, Commission. Pleasure to be here before you today to talk about a very important project for the Nashville Airport Authority, which is our Central Ramp expansion. My name is Tracy Holton. I'm the Vice President of New Horizon for the Airport Authority. And today I have with me Caitlin Dillon. She's the Project Manager for the airport. Dave Kaur, who is with InSafe, and Carissa Agnes, who is with Kiewit. So we do have a short presentation. We're going to tag team a little bit and take turns at the podium. I'm going to kick us off. We have a brief agenda. We should have no problem meeting our 10-minute limit. And I'm just going to jump right in. So we are like Nashville and Davidson County. We are here to be a part of this community, and we also are sharing the challenges that the city has with growth and success. So as it relates to passenger volumes, you know, the airport has grown exponentially in the last 10 years. We've doubled enplanements. Current strategic forecast is to grow 1.18 million passengers per year from now until who knows. And we are on track for that for FY25, which ends June 30th of this year, and we'll be at 25 million annual passengers. So again, we're part of this community. We obviously aren't going anywhere. We serve the community, and we have the same challenges, all while receiving no local tax dollars. But we are, even despite those challenges, we are committed to the environment. So just a few efforts that we have, some related to stormwater, some not. With all of our parking garages, we have, without request of application of permit or presented as mitigation, we've added rainwater cisterns to all of our parking garages, which then serve as irrigation for the area, adjacent areas, as well as we have a lake plate geothermal system. We have all of our new facilities as part of BNA Vision and part of New Horizon that we've been building. I'm sure most people have heard of it. Are LEED certified, as well as all of our parking garages are Park Smart certified, which is basically the LEED equivalent for parking garages. We also have a few EV charging stations that are solar powered. And another big one is we do not let any useful material leave our property. So we have a large material stockpile program for use on future projects with the airport. So speaking specifically to the project, just to orient you a little bit, obviously the terminal building and those parking garages I just mentioned are in the foreground. In the yellow is the project limits. This is adjacent to our current aircraft parking apron. I-40 is sort of off to the right, and Donaldson Pike, the newly relocated Donaldson Pike, is just to the plan south. So specifically, the purpose of the project is to expand the existing aircraft apron to support the increased flight schedules. Specifically, as Southwest has announced the crew base a few months ago, it was in the news. All those daily morning flights, they stage with remain overnight parking. This will provide 14 of those and then support Southwest to get those planes to the gates for those early morning departures. It also will have 7 de-icing positions. A few fun facts, this is about 1.2 million cubic yards of fill, and 22.5 acres is kind of the total of the fill area. And as you can see, the existing conditions, there's a large depression. We are taking up about a little over a third of it for this project. It does require, it does encapsulate roughly 1,400 linear feet of Sims Branch. And we've taken a two-step permitting approach. So it's a very important project with a very aggressive schedule for us. So we've taken a two-step approach. One is to get the grading permit for everything outside the stream buffer. And next would be to come to you today requesting the variance and for the second grading permit. And now I'm going to turn it over to Carissa.
Good morning. As the contractor for this project, one of the first things that we do when we come into a project like this is we like to determine what is going to be the impacts to the environment. We look at all the regulations, look at all the policies, look at everything we need to follow for that locality, and we make sure that we're following all those specifics exactly how we need to in order to make this project successful. So one of the first things we did is we determined what variance would be needed for the buffer disturbance, and we looked at 1,418 linear feet of channel mitigation, which equals about 496.6 functional feet of mitigation that we would need to have for this project. So one of the things that we do on all of our projects is we like to meet with all of our regulatory authorities. So we had pre-application meetings with Metro Water Services, TDAC, and the Corps to discuss this project, discuss what we were doing, and the need of the mitigation to get their recommendations of what they would need us to do to be successful on the project. So after meeting with those agencies, we looked at our mitigation approach, and we researched all of our mitigation options within the area. We met with the airport and we discussed these. And one thing that we found is that there are a lot of FAA restrictions to mitigation on site due to greenways bringing in wildlife. And of course, all of us fly on airplanes. I'm sure we all fly somewhere. We know we do not want any birds or anything around those aircrafts. It's a huge safety concern, not only for the airport, but also for me traveling on the plane, which I'll be doing this afternoon. So we have to limit the areas that we do on the project itself to make sure that all of the people that are traveling here to Nashville to experience your great city are safe coming in and out of this area. So the aviation concern is a big thing. So after meeting with the airport, they're really limited on what we can do on site, especially with building a greenway. So we looked for other options. So what we looked at and what we're proposing to you today is the Cedar Forest Mitigation Bank. We purchased 786.2 credits with the bank. Again, reminding you that we only need 496.6 for the project. The proposed mitigation is the preferred method for TDAC and the Corps because it is in our service area. And just to clarify too, I think you all have received electronic copies, but I have 2 hard copies if you need them. We have on March 21st received our TDAC ARAP permit, and on the 28th we received our Corps permit. We also have a signed FONSI that's been published by the FAA as well. Now I'm going to turn it over to Dave, who's going to kind of walk you through what the Forest Mitigation Bank is and how it's beneficial for this project.
So the airport, as Tracy alluded to, has had a lot of development and has been before this body before. And I think the last time during Concourse A, they took the feedback that they heard regarding using in-lieu fee programs as compensatory mitigation. And just kind of want to talk a little bit about why a mitigation bank is a better alternative to that. And so the credits are established in advance. You're working with the agencies so that the functional return is occurring before the impact occurs. So there's no time lag between the benefit of the mitigation. There's lower risk because you are working with the agencies with oversight. It's transparent and accountable. They're monitored. You have third parties who hold long-term easements on the property. So it's not just the airport who's doing this, but their partner, Headwater Reserves, who's actually developing the mitigation bank. The studies have shown that there's a higher success rate with mitigation banks, and it's the regulatory preference. As Carissa mentioned, it's what the TDEC and the Corps has an established hierarchy, and mitigation banks sit atop that hierarchy as the preference for compensatory mitigation. So it's immediate, it's local, and it's reliable. Here you can see Davidson County in the yellow. The purple's not really showing up great, but it's kind of the watersheds that are around. And one of the challenges that the airport has is it's actually sitting in 2 different watersheds. So the eastern part is in the Stones River, and the western part is in the Mill Creek drainage. So you've got a little bit of a divide. But when you talk about the benefits of mitigation, the water quality benefits of filtering nutrients, filtering pollutants, reducing sedimentation, flood mitigation and floodwater storage. Those are realized now, and they're in place when the impact occurs. The other thing is that water doesn't recognize political boundaries. So you can look at Davidson County, but it's actually the watersheds that we should be looking at when we're talking about the benefit to water quality. So the watershed-based approach reflects the hydrological connections. So the Cedar Forest Mitigation Bank is on the Stones River side of this divide, so it's in Wilson County, but the agencies establish primary and secondary service areas, recognizing that the benefits of water quality can extend to adjacent and downstream watersheds. So the secondary service area is within. So when you look at the Cedar Forest Mitigation Bank is in the green here, the airport location is in the orange. When you look at the flow path from the Cedar Forest Mitigation Bank, it goes through the Stones River, through Davidson County for over 60 miles. And so those downstream benefits of the mitigation from a water quality perspective are all being conveyed through that.
You got about a minute.
Yeah, thanks. So just kind of hopping ahead, there are other mitigation banks. They don't represent the same kind of water quality benefit. If they're in the upper part of the Harpeth, there is a connection to Davidson County, albeit small in kind of the western portion. So, and then when you look at in lieu fee, kind of what the objections were the last time we were before you, you get a kind of sporadic scattershot approach to mitigation. Who knows where it's going to happen or when it's going to happen. So,
okay. Last comment.
Yeah, so just in conclusion, we feel like this is a win for everyone, for the airport, for the community, for the Stormwater Committee, that this is the right thing to do. We have purchased 2 years worth of credits, signed a contract for, and we have 2 more years of first right of refusal because there will be more development at the airport to continue with the growth. So this might not be the last time you'll see us. And we thank you for consideration.
Great. Thank you. All right. Well, that'll close the applicant's presentation. Logan, did we receive any letters? Notices?
No, I just had a lot of people reaching out to ask what the project was, but nobody in support or in opposition necessarily.
Okay. All right. Anybody here to speak in favor or against? One? Okay. If you would please come to the mic and introduce yourself and address. And if you're in favor or in opposition.
Well, my name is Mukesh Patel, and within 1,000 feet, you said that my property is in touch with your property. I'm at Savannah. I don't know what address it is. Sorry about that. I have several properties. Okay, it's 450 Glansonbury Road. That's my property. So what you guys are doing, is it going to affect my property in a good way or a bad way? I'm just going to, in a nutshell.
Do I answer or do? Okay.
I think the proper protocol is, sir, is to get with the applicants when they leave and have a conversation with them about where your property is and how there would be impacts instead of there being a conversation between the applicant and someone who's providing comment. If you want to put your concerns on the record,
yes,
we'd appreciate
because
that.
I know you guys represent the people, right? So what they're asking is directly affecting me. Am I right?
Yes, and so I would ask that you put your comments on record, and then so generally you folks have 2 minutes to speak in favor or against or express their concerns, and so that is recorded in the meeting, and then afterwards I would recommend you talk to the applicant.
So how long do I have after this comment I make to favor or against?
Generally, you have 2 minutes to speak.
Okay.
So I'm giving you more time, but.
Okay, that's I'm trying to figure out what they're doing, what they're going to do, and understand how it's going to affect my property.
Okay, and then I would ask that you talk to them afterwards.
Okay.
They'll have to meet stormwater regulations, so it should have no impact to your property.
So long as,
As far as a stormwater
okay.
runoff perspective, they can't dump more water.
Because I heard something about parking lot, a garage. I'm trying to put a piece of information as to what
Understood.
they're trying to do.
That's already constructed. They were using examples of environmental benefits that they included in previous projects.
Okay.
This is to pave, pour concrete out where the planes are taxing.
Okay. So you're talking about building a barrier to hold the water?
No, sir. It's, again, I think it's probably better if we.
I talk to them directly?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And all of this is going to be built and constructed within the regulations that are either local or federal.
Okay, so can I do it in like no vote right now?
Okay, yeah, so this board, their purview is only to review from a stormwater perspective, and their purview, or what their role is to ensure that there's not going to be additional runoff, or if there is runoff that's created by the site, that it's mitigated properly. So we're not going to be able to, so what they're looking at specifically is the stormwater aspect of this project. They're not looking at any other aspect of the project. So that's really all they're here to do today is to review it from that lens. And so to that end, if you have questions about what's going on outside of that, then I think you should speak to the applicant. But if your question is from a stormwater perspective, are you going to have more stormwater concerns? Then that's why we're here today. And the answer to that would be that's why they're reviewing the case today, to try to ensure that what they're doing on site won't put more stormwater on anybody else's property.
Okay.
That's the whole point of today's conversation. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Patel. Okay. Anybody else here to speak in favor or against? Seeing none, I'll close public hearing and open it up to the commission for conversation. One thing I want to clarify, though, I think I saw in the presentation that 496 credits are needed. You're purchasing 786. Is that correct? And what is the purpose of that?
So we're preparing for future needs. And so when the Cedar Forest Mitigation Bank approached us, they have up to 5 years worth of credits. First year has been approved. We purchased those. We've signed the contract to buy the second year worth of credits, which should be about the same amount. And then we have first right of refusal for the next 3 rounds. So
You intend to exhaust what TDEC wants you to exhaust for this, and you're holding the rest.
correct, for future projects.
And then that was going to be my question, just for clarity. The credits that you were using, they overlap with other permitting mitigation obligations from TDEC and others, correct?
Not at the moment. Those are just, we're banking those, correct?
Are you talking about excess?
Oh, sorry.
No, just the credits, was it 496?
Yeah, 496 is for, yes, satisfies TDEC and the core.
Okay, so you're satisfying the TDEC and core requirements. I just wanted to make that clear for the record. Those are those requirements. Obviously, we can require additional mitigation, but okay, thank you.
Okay, to follow on that question, you're purchasing 786.2, which is a 1.58 ratio. Are you intending on those? Are you trying to reach a higher ratio with those, or only the 496.6 are for this project, but you're just purchasing excess to have for other future projects?
That's
so you're
correct.
not, essentially, you're not saying we're doing a 1.5 ratio mitigation. You're only doing what's required by TDEC.
That's correct.
Okay.
I'll add that the last time the airport came to us, they found themselves in a situation where they had partnered with a nonprofit that was administering the credit program, and it was determined that there were not enough mitigation opportunities within that provider. So I appreciate you making an effort to go above and beyond to reserve those rights for the next project.
In this approach, my understanding is it's a lot more costly than it would be to do the approach they did last time, where it couldn't be executed. It's actually a tougher scenario that they put themselves in. Is that correct?
Can you speak to what the mitigation is, I guess, and how that gets implemented? And I guess as you explain that, to make sure that I understand your presentation, it's outside of Davidson County, but upstream of the watershed that
Yes.
flows into Davidson County?
Yes. So to answer your last question first, yes, it is in Wilson County. The way that the agencies, TDEC and the Corps, deal with stream mitigation right now, they've moved away from a ratio approach, and they use the stream quantification tool, which is a quantitative measure of stream function based on hydrology, hydraulics, geomorphology, biology, water quality, so instead of doing a ratio where you increase the amount, it results in a lower number than the actual footage, but it's a functional measure. And what they do is someone goes and finds an impaired stream and they repair it, and they use the same tool to develop the functional lift that they're going to be providing there. And so that functional lift, the delta is the credits that they get, and then they sell those. And so that's what the partner, Headwater Reserve, which is a mitigation banker, they almost exclusively do mitigation for streams and wetlands. They found this site. It's kind of near Cedars of Lebanon State Park, and it has been historically in agriculture, and they're going to go and restore the stream channels. They have a buffer. They have some wetland areas within the buffer, and I think it ranges from 75 feet to 300 feet of a naturally planted restored buffer that they're planning on doing there. And they've already got it approved, and they're getting ready to start construction on that. So,
So, how many miles, or what's the linear impact of the Stones River downstream of the mitigation credit area in Davidson County? I know I like that you're looking at upstream water, taking the watershed approach, and that's something that historically this board has wanted the mitigation to be in the county, but when that's not feasible and achievable, looking upstream and taking that watershed approach I think makes sense. But you did designate how much of the stream is in Davidson County that's downstream from the mitigation area.
yes. So it's about 20 miles from the bank through Wilson County, through Percy Priest before it gets to Davidson County, and then about 60 miles of flow through Davidson County between Percy Priest, Stones River, and the Cumberland.
So potentially having a positive improvement on 60 miles of stream in Davidson County. And the stream, the SQT, there was a great presentation on this at the Tennessee American Water Resources Association conference, and the new tool is about to come out. So if anyone's curious, we can probably get that information on how these streams are being, assessed using that tool, and how you get that lift and what that really means. But it does account for water quality issues. So I personally appreciate what you're doing, looking upstream in the watershed.
Does Sims Branch feed into which watershed does it feed into? Mill Creek or Stones River?
Mill Creek.
It feeds into Mill Creek. Oh. Okay. Yeah, it's kind of goes back to Commissioner Camp's point of we do like to see it, the mitigation or the banking occur in the same watershed in which the stream is being impacted. I understand the property is partially on both, right, to some degree. Yeah. Can I ask, how much is the credit these days?
Our contract says we are paying $3,500 a foot, or per credit, excuse me. So we've spent $1.7 million on this mitigation, roughly.
For the current and the future of the 786 credits?
That would be
All right.
Do you
almost that.
somebody do the math for the what? So I know that you have future, but all you're asking today, what the variance request, the mitigation that's being presented is the 496.6.
That's correct.
I appreciate that you outline that there's more in case that is a place that our commission decided that we needed maybe additional mitigation efforts outside of what TDEC requires. Do you have, so at about 1.7?
For this mitigation.
Oh, just for this one.
project,
Okay. Appreciate it.
1.7, yes.
That's for the 496.
That's for the 496, yes.
Can you go back to the plan?
So-
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say,
So if it's for the full, that's 2.7 million. I just, we had a great example of kind of public-public partnership within our agencies for mitigation. Metro Water Services was expanding Oberhundro and our new raw water intake off the Cumberland River. And so they originally came to this commission asking to purchase credits. And there was an opportunity directly across the river within Metro Parks to improve Shelby Bottoms Golf Course. We had extensive work with, or not we, but staff and Parks and Metro Legal work together to create a template for public-public cooperation in that regard. And from our perspective, it was a success that was administered by the Cumberland River Compact. I don't know if staff would agree with that, but I maybe see a nodding somewhat head. But we had hoped that would create a vehicle and a template for public entities, not private to public, but public to public, when we're spending this kind of money to improve our park system or other Metro-owned properties. So I guess to wrap that statement up, is as we work towards a motion, I'd ask that there's a condition put on the motion that requests the applicant to explore an opportunity with Metro Parks and other agency to perform this mitigation. Maybe it's not for what's been purchased, but for the future. I think Parks would welcome that, considering the success of what we just completed. We want to try to keep the mitigation of the impact within Davidson County, and these are big opportunities to make a difference within our watershed. So I'll leave that statement there.
Yeah, I second that. I was going to mention something similar because I think that was a great project. It's a great partnership in a way that we can really get a win-win for the dollars that are invested in a number of different ways. Can you pull the plan back up that showed the airport layout or the airplane layout on there? I just wanted to confirm what the area was on there, and then also the aerial that was after it. So the red box is the area that's being added, or can you confirm what area is being added in that diagram, or is it the whole thing?
Yes, the red box.
Red box. So so it sounds like a lot of fill is going in there to raise all that up.
Mm-hmm.
What happens to those streams and areas outside of it, I guess, with all that fill that goes in there? And
We do not have a project planned to fill any more of this area or impact any further of these streams.
So is a wall being built around that edge at those?
The elevation of the taxiway and the airfield system is about 50, 60 feet above the streams. So no wall needed, plenty of detention.
But the blue lines in the pond are low, correct?
Correct.
Right. And the red's being raised.
Correct.
Yeah, it's going to be a slope. It won't be.
Oh, you're just going to tie back in.
Yeah.
Got it. To the slope. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that,
Go ahead.
I was going to say that I would assume as the airport continues to grow that the entire basin here will be filled. Is that an accurate statement? Or
Well-
we don't know.
Well, we originally thought that, and we've actually backed off that. We do not think we need to expand this particular area any further. Other areas
For now.
on the property, yes, this likely is the end of this area for the foreseeable future.
So one of the things that we look at is that variance shall only be issued upon a determination that the variance is the minimum necessary considering the flooding hazard to afford relief. I did see that you all had some alternative plans. Can you speak to those as to why you felt like this was the only feasible area for this particular extension, and why, encapsulating a stream is something we like to avoid, but the other options that you all explored?
Yeah, so if you can see in the picture, there's only so many spaces that you can use for the aircraft apron. It has to tie to the existing aircraft apron for maneuverability of the aircraft. You've already seen, we've already come before this commission for the area just north of there. You can see it under, sorry. I'm going to be way too short, but it's sort of shown as dirt. That's actually paved now on the very north corner. Is there a planner? Yeah. Sorry, that's not working very well, too short. It doesn't work on this screen. I don't know if there's another image that shows. All right, hold on. I can use an arrow here. So this is basically the only area remaining that the apron to maneuver aircraft that can be expanded. So we can't go to the north, you can't go to the terminal building, through the terminal building, you can't go into the airfield, and we can't go south. Again, it's surrounded by airfield and the terminal building. So this is the only opportunity to expand the apron.
I can
I can elaborate a little bit. So part of our NEPA process to get that FONSI was we have to look at alternatives for any development on the airport. And part of the matrix of evaluating different locations is, does it meet the project intent? And we weren't able to identify another project area that did meet that intent because it's got to touch the existing terminal.
Okay, can you speak to, you're putting in a landfill and you are essentially taking out, some capacity with the stream that is going to be removed essentially. Can you speak to how you're handling the runoff from the new, I assume impermeable surface that's going to be there? Because that is also something, thinking about the specific site, how are you handling the stormwater there? It's one thing to purchase mitigation credits somewhere to help with some of the mitigation, but also, how are you handling the stormwater runoff that's being created, the new runoff, not just the displacement of that stream, but the accumulation with the additional impervious area?
Sure. So, the airport has a robust drainage collection system. We've got 2 layers to that. During the de-icing season, we collect anything that has contaminants, and it drains to the south pond. Yes, you got it. You know this better than I. So the surface drainage, it goes through an oil water separator and then goes to the south pond for treatment and removal of glycol, de-icing. Once it's cleaned, it releases to those streams. We have 2 levels of restrictors to keep all runoff on property. One is underneath the taxiway there, right before you go under the hole. And then the other is a little further north. Just above your pointer there is a large dam with a restrictor at the bottom and a sluice gate. So I guess long answer for a short thing, we keep it all on site and we treat it there.
And that'll handle the added impervious area.
I see Mr. Mishu here. I'd like to recognize him.
Steve Mishu again. Thank you for letting me speak. I understand what the commissioners are raising. This is all part of our daily process that we do on a review on a project. We'll absolutely make sure prior to any grading permit issuance that there's no degree of flooding that's going to be increased on anybody else. We will make sure that all pre-post, all the grading, all the erosion control, all the slopes, all of that is taken care of. It's just the normal part of what we do on a daily basis.
Thank you.
I really don't have any problem with this. I think the mitigation is great. Would it have been great if they were approving a stream through a park? Sure. But it would be great to look into that in the future. I know y'all are going to have a lot of future projects, but for this one, they're bound a lot of credits that are going to be put to use immediately. Citizen Bank that may or may not be used, which is what we came across last time. So I really appreciate the approach this time that prevented a repeat of last time.
I echo Commissioner Fulmer's comments.
I would add to that just because I do think there's a lot of opportunity and obviously there's a lot of growth that you guys will be seeing as those projections are met. Those partnerships take a long time to develop and work out, and I would ask that whatever you can do to look far ahead to identify what those opportunities are. I think it's a huge community win and a community benefit when you can find those and to use those dollars and credits in ways that people in Davidson County see them and experience them, and things like that take time. So the more that you can look out to see what those opportunities may be and start having those discussions, I think will allow those things to happen in the future on those sort of projects.
And I want to say, looking at this one and kind of looking at what the commission has to review, we are looking at the peculiar circumstances of the land when determining the exceptional hardship. And in this particular case, I think it falls in that bucket. I think that they've looked at alternatives, and because of the way the use is and the way that the property's laid out, this kind of fits into how I see precision from the Court of Appeals case and our manual. So in this particular circumstance, I've looked at it and I appreciate everything that was provided. My only question from either commissioners is obviously the mitigation they're proposing, they would have had to have done that mitigation with or without coming to us for a variance. And so that would be the only thing that I would be considering in this particular case, if this mitigation kind of meets what we expect outside of TDEC.
I'd say that it's kind of arbitrary for us to say that we want a factor greater than TDEC. I mean, I would be more inclined to see how it's being implemented as far as ratio of improvement, but I think it's all great. They rolled the dice, go ahead and buying it, but I don't have a problem with it.
Well, I think taking the watershed approach, with even if, sometimes we want to see a higher ratio, I think there is some, downstream benefits because the stones feeds into the Cumberland. And so if you look at our 303D impaired streams list and stuff, like taking that upstream approach has a win-win to not just the stream or the area being mitigated, but downstream for water quality across the board for everything downstream. So I think this could be a win-win for water quality.
My only caveat, maybe a question, is I'd love to push for mitigation to happen within the same watershed. I think most of this property is within the Mill Creek watershed. Is that fair to say? The majority?
Most, it's half.
Is it half?
It's pretty even.
Is it even?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
half.
All right. So it's okay. So it's just that's my only piece is where we create disruption, we create mitigation in the same watershed if we can.
I agree, but they're both part of the Cumberland watershed if you take the bigger view. But maybe something to consider moving forward is if the project's in Mill Creek, you look for a mitigation bank in Mill Creek. And I agree, but
It's safe to say you looked there first.
We had them look everywhere.
The only mitigation bank available, which is why we jumped on it.
And so that's why I bring up opportunities within Metro Hardy's because the mitigation banks are getting harder and harder to find, and they may be eliminated with this new legislation coming through our federal government right now. I don't know. We'll see. All right. So that's why I say it's getting harder and harder to find. So while we have opportunity to create a system and a process to utilize properties that are within Metro for Metro to Metro type projects, quasi-governmental agency, let's put that in place before there are no opportunities. That's my take on this. So, okay.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay. If the next applicant can come up, thank you for waiting. I want to go ahead and get going. But yeah, do you want to go ahead and screen? Okay. All right. We're going to lose Commissioner Fulmer, but this is just preliminary, I believe, so it doesn't require a vote. All right? Preliminary?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's correct.
All right. So with that, I'll go ahead and get straight to it, and we'll let Logan introduce the case.
Case number 5 on the agenda, case 2025-00009, The Bend Preliminary, 2400 and 0 Pennington Bend Road. APN is 062-0000-3500 and 062-0000-3600. Inspector is MPDES, Council District 15, Jeff Gregg. Applicant's request, disturbance of the wetland water quality buffer and associated 0.09 acre wetland removal caused by widening of an existing access road to a proposed RV campground in order to comply with emergency access standards. Appellant is Northgate Resorts, represented by Jubal Paris. Comments, Stormwater staff. Site is proposing disturbance of wetland water quality buffer and associated 0.09 acre wetland removal caused by widening of existing access road to a proposed RV campground in order to comply with emergency access standards. Code, no comment provided. Planning, no comment provided. Greenways, applicant to arrange a meeting with Greenways to discuss the interaction between this stormwater variance appeal and the final site plan for the Bend 2022 SP 057002, currently under review, and to resolve issues, if any, prior to final approval of the Stormwater Management Commission case 2025-00009.
All right. You've sat through a lot of these today. Thank you for your patience. I think you know how it goes down, right? So I'll give you your 10 minutes after your introduction.
Yeah, thank you. And in the interest of time, we've had a couple of preliminary conversations with Logan and a handful of other folks on staff about, there's a lot going on. If you look at that big map, the project is 215 acres. There's extensive floodplain, which overlaps with the CO policy area. Our preliminary SP was approved in May 2023, which allows us to develop within 20% of the CO policy area that falls within the floodplain. So we've submitted our final SP for the RV camp resort. We're touching 18% of that 20% or something. We're falling with under that. Our original plans were quite a bit more extensive, had more impact to floodplain and wetlands. And through our conversations with TDEC and Army Corps, we've pared that all the way down to the de minimis impact that would be covered under a general ARAP, a nationwide Corps permit. And it's only to provide that secondary point of emergency egress to Pennington Bend Road. The property sits between Pennington Bend Road and Music Valley Drive. We've got access on Music Valley, but we would be providing this gated emergency access on Pennington Bend, which gives us another way out to get out to McGavick and Briley Parkway. And we've ran this, the most direct route from Pennington Bend to the core of the development so that emergency access doesn't go through any RV campground areas, because you don't know, somebody may be trying to back up their RV for the first time in the middle of that drive when an ambulance or fire truck needs to get through. So that's the reason we're going directly through the wetlands. We're using an existing farm road, and we're just having to widen that to where it meets fire access standards for the 20 feet. So that's really the crux of this application is 0.09 acres of wetland impact and associated buffer impact. We're proposing to plant 51 trees kind of around the perimeter of the wetland that extends north into the property to enhance some vegetation and create that vegetated kind of buffer around that. So in the interest of time, if there's any discussion from y'all, I'd love to know, are we on the right track? Is, planting those trees, considerate compensation for this? Thank you.
Okay, great. Good. 8 minutes left. Be good. Okay. All right. With that, I'll close the applicant's presentation. Logan, we received any letters or notices? Concerns?
Yes, we received, it was pretty late, so I don't know if it's actually on your tablet, but we did receive a letter from, sorry, I was pulling it up. Heather Lose, editor-in-chief of the Tennessee Conservationist. It's in opposition to the variance request. I don't know if Rebecca might want to pull that up so you can read through what her concerns are.
Sure.
I'm sorry for breaking the protocol. I just wasn't sure if Logan or Rebecca was understanding. Is this her comment based on her profession, where she works, or was this her personal?
I honestly have no idea. I haven't spoken with her in any capacity.
Okay. I just wasn't sure if it was through her official capacity through either TDEC or State Park. I just wasn't sure. Sorry about that. Thanks.
Thanks for the clarification.
Yeah, I was made aware of this on the drive over here this morning, so I haven't had a chance to connect with her and see what that is. It sounds like it's a comment more on the project as a whole, and she may not know the specifics of the variance request.
I guess we also had a comment come in about a bald eagle, and I think that's been addressed now as well. But.
Yes, there's an eagle's nest that's existed for several years to the far north on the property, and we've reviewed the U.S. Fish and Wildlife recommendations for buffers around Eagle's Nest, which is 660 feet. The area of impact is about 1,400 feet away from that Eagle's Nest, and the closest RV is about 780 feet from that. The one thing that does get close to that Eagle's Nest is the greenway, so we'll just be very careful when we put that in, and we're open to whatever guidelines and feedback we get on how to install that greenway, whether it's a certain time of year when the eagles won't be disturbed.
Thank you for that. Okay. Anybody here to speak in favor or against? Seeing none. I'll close public hearing and open it up for discussion. I just want to make sure I understand that the only component of this case that's requiring a variance is road widening. There are no other future components. Is that correct?
There's no other impacts in future phases. No.
Okay. And you've pared it down, I guess, from what it was. That would have required a more extensive variance.
Yes, we've got a greenway bank-to-bank bridge crossing, and we've got a couple of stormwater outfalls within Zone 1 buffers that we've talked to Logan and staff about, and those should be approvable per the table 6.3 kind of general business items.
Thank you.
I would also add that some of the disturbances are associated with agriculture, so they did not fall under the purview of our permitting process.
Is there so that there's a use that complies with that on this property as part of the development, agricultural?
Correct. There
Okay.
is going to be some active agriculture
Okay,
on this
great.
project.
Okay. Excellent.
Can I ask, when you're looking at, I think you might have mentioned, I guess, was it evaluated to go around the wetlands, and talk through that a little bit more extensively?
Primarily, the reason we took that most direct approach is there's an existing farm road that's raised a few feet that's not in the wetland right now, but it's only about 16 feet wide. So the reason we're asking for the variance and having the impact is to widen that to 20 feet. So it's kind of twofold of there's already a path through there, it's just not quite wide enough. And then the other component is to take it around the wetland would be taking that access road through the RV campground itself, which is kind of an unpredictable path and kind of a circuitous route to get to the main amenity core of the project.
Could you, and sorry if when we went back, because it's a little hard, but I think it's the line going north, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that blue to, I guess it would be east,
Mm-hmm.
is the wetlands. I mean, when you're widening, this may be a stupid question, but can't you just widen on the side that doesn't have the wetlands? Or, I mean, just to stay out of it and still keep it a fairly straight route and this is for emergency vehicles and no other.
No, it'll be gated. There will be only
They'll be
emergency
gated,
vehicles.
but is there an opportunity to widen to the west, not going into the wetlands?
If you follow the cursor, that light gray line is that existing.
Oh, I
farm road.
see.
So
It looked like it
we're
fell
cutting
out
right
of
through
it
yeah.
on the other one.
The shape in here, I believe, is not quite accurate to the HD that we have. But the wetland does follow that form where it narrows as it goes north.
If you're only widening that portion to 20, you widening it to 20 feet?
20 feet with a little bit of shoulder and then the side slopes to get down to the existing grade, yes.
So the impact is more than 20 feet?
There's a zoomed in version that's got a bunch of shading on it. It's kind of an odd shape where like the top of bank, if you will, is not quite 20 feet. So we're widening that to a 20-foot wide road and then tie-in slopes and a little bit of shoulder.
If it's just for emergency access that's gated and used in the event of emergency and something else is probably blocked, have you had any discussions with the fire marshal and that sort of thing if that particular section of it doesn't necessarily have to be widened as long as the roadway after it is wide enough to accommodate whatever the fire vehicle width may be? I'm just curious if you have to widen that particular crossing.
I've not had that conversation specifically, but through the SP process, it was a fire access road, which is 20 feet wide, was the requirement. But I can dig into that and take a look at that.
I think it's worth a question. Because 16 feet would allow you easily access for a fire truck through that as an access point and not necessarily have to widen it.
Was 20 feet designated in the SP, or was it just said fire access
I'd
has
have
to be
check
provided?
the wording of that condition.
And can you tell me a little bit? So I know that you're asking to expand that road, but there were other alternatives, but it was through the RV park. Were there any other alternatives besides? So we have the gated area that you're talking about, the farm road. You said there was an alternative that goes through the RV park. Is there any other potential ability not to disturb a wetland?
I don't believe so. The wetland goes, you can kind of see the red dots are the edges of the wetland we're proposing trees. Just we've got RVs on both sides kind of going around that wetland. So kind of any other path is either going through a wider section of wetlands or it's going through that RV area.
And do you care to point out where the alternative path would be?
It would be somewhere through, I'm not tall enough either. So this is our proposed connection through the wetland. It would be somehow around, just to get to the other side of that.
And while you're there, the other agricultural disturbance to wetland is just planned north of.
Yeah, the existing, so it was an existing farm, and anything that was not too wet to be farmed has been farmed in the past. So that area would be all of this, and then this area is farmed right now, and then this area, the area in blue is where that wetland overlaps where it's being farmed.
Okay, so we are disturbing the wetland in the agricultural use area near the Cumberland, near the riverbank. Is that right?
Continuously farmed areas that we're talking with TDEC and the Corps and Metro. There's not a permit needed to continue to farm those areas.
But the 0.9 acres is what's in orange.
That is, well, it's not necessarily what's in orange. It's kind of the area to the north of that that's required to widen that access and have a little bit of a shoulder and then tie back to the area.
Yeah. Okay.
How wide is the current farm road?
It's really just wide enough to get like a pickup truck through, so maybe 10 feet and then there's a little bit of a shoulder existing.
All right.
I think it'll be really helpful to understand the detail of that cross section when you come in for the final and what the impact is, existing, proposed.
Yeah, Logan, there may be, I don't know who's controlling the screen. There, I think, is another exhibit that shows some cross sections.
And while you're getting to that, I'll ask my next question, which is the 51 new trees above and beyond. How did you arrive at that number?
There's about 50 trees existing in the Wetland 3 area. That's the one to the north of this road, so we were doubling it.
And those are outside of any other requirements for trees associated with any other?
Yes, I mean, we're pretty
ordinance.
far over our tree density unit requirement. Okay. And through the general ARAP or the nationwide core permit, there's no mitigation required. So those are just icing on the cake.
Okay.
Is this what you need?
Yes, this, and I don't know if you can zoom in on the crossing profile. This will show kind of a perpendicular cross-section of that existing road and then how we're proposing to expand that. This is a linear view of, there's currently a couple of culverts that cross underneath it. We're having to increase the size of those and the number. And then if you scroll to the right, there's a perpendicular cross-section where the existing topo is kind of wonky, but it's, we're expanding this top width. Sorry, this is small. But the existing top width is, maybe a little bit more than 10 feet, and this is that proposed 20-foot wide road, and then there's some side slopes. And we're grading that to drain to the existing wetland.
So I think when you come back, having the cross section more visible would be helpful for us to see what the limitations are on the terrain there. It looks like it's a definite change in elevation from one side of the road to the next. Also, having something maybe in writing from the fire marshal about what the requirements are that you need to meet, and alternatives that are considered, and present those, because we have to see that. But one thing I was wondering, Rebecca, can you go back up to kind of the bigger picture of them? So thinking about like origin destination, you want to come in straight into the campground kind of area off of, is that, I'm trying to think about Briley and McGavick and that area. So you're coming in, the gate would be up there kind of on the north, above there in that area, correct?
Yeah, this is rotated to the right, so that's west, but yeah,
Okay,
that's
so that's
Pennington
west.
Bend, which is
So
kind of
you're
the back
coming in
door.
off of McGavick?
You'd go from Briley to McGavick to Music Valley Drive is where the main entry of this would be,
Right.
and this is the kind of the back door emergency
Okay,
access.
so is that entry on Music Valley Drive or?
That the one being circled is Music Valley Drive. That's the
Right.
main entry to the
So
development.
what is that one tying into?
Pennington Bend Road.
Pennington Bend. Okay. Why would you not come in up further to the, I guess, right, yeah, in there and kind of tie in more directly into the campground? And you wouldn't have to necessarily deal with the wetland issue. Is that not an option?
We can take a look at that. I think it comes back to that would be a road that's it's going to have RVs backing out onto. It's going to serve the RV campground itself. We were trying to have an emergency access that was clear of having those actual campsites on it.
Okay, but if there's an emergency, do you really think 10 RVs are going to be blocking the roadway?
I think it's an unpredictable situation, but
Yeah.
we can talk through that with the fire marshal as well.
Okay. Because I would just think that would be another option that would alleviate some of the wetland impacts, even though there's already a farm road there.
Okay.
Not to do the work for you, just like, I'm curious why that's not one of the alternatives.
We can take a look at that as an alternative.
Okay. It'd be less circuitous, like you were talking about, potentially.
Okay.
Thanks.
Just curious, not to kind of do the work for you too, but you're coming to us for feedback. I know, is that an existing road where Commissioner Camp was kind of wanting you to evaluate farther northwest coming off of the back?
Farther to the north, there's a stream, and that's all stream buffer. Kind of there's the wetland that's being farmed, and then it leads like right into the stream that crosses under Pennington Bend. There's a pretty big culvert right there. So we did not take a look at bringing in that access road any further north because that's an existing access. And it's if you're coming in McGavick, you would get to that sooner. It's just an existing access.
I think for me, and I know that if it's not identified on the SP, that'll send you back through council, which is tough. But I'm just finding it hard to see where, I mean, I thought the blue was the wetland, sorry. It's
some of the wetlands.
I think that identifying very clearly where the wetlands are when you come back on the exhibits and
The purple
yeah, and then also kind of showing the alternatives that you evaluated. And I'm assuming that, sorry, the one at the bottom is McGavick, you said? Music Valley Drive, you're only allowed one curb cut, and they're saying that the access has to be from a different road, is that?
We have our primary curb cut. We have a couple other gated emergency accesses down here as well. This is to have just another way that if something's going on Music Valley Drive, you could come straight off of McGavick to Pennington Bend and get into this.
Are these required, this number?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, this was part of our SP conditions was to have a second emergency access.
Okay, so I think just showing a little bit more clearly on an exhibit with not only the wetlands but the stream, that would be helpful for me anyway.
One more thing, I'm not like a transportation roadway design engineer, but just because there's a farm road there, it may not have a good foundation base to support like an ambulance. So it's one thing to widen, but you may want to also consider like the stability of the road
Yes.
under the weight load, and you might have to rip part of that out, which may prove problematic versus using, and if there's an existing culvert on the stream up there.
That existing culvert is for Pennington Bend Road.
Okay.
No, we're proposing a little bit of regrading, and we're
Okay.
going to have a reinforced gravel system with a geogrid with the gravel in it. So
Okay.
it'll be rated for emergency vehicles.
Okay. Just checking on that.
I skipped over some of the stuff because I only had a few minutes. I didn't want to go too far over today. Thank you.
Okay. Any other feedback? It's good.
and I'm looking at some of my tree experts over there, but based off of what they wanted to plant, any sort of feedback?
I didn't look at the list in great detail. I think having the ensuring that it is actual mitigation, like we were talking about before, above and beyond what would be required elsewhere, and then that it actually is mitigating the impact in a meaningful way in terms of, size, species, location is something that we always look for to make sure that the mitigation is actually mitigating what the impact is. So as you come back, just having that detail and being able to clearly see what and how that works will be important.
Yeah, you can do that.
Logan, was there any feedback from staff that we need to reinforce?
No, I don't think so. To get with Greenways, I guess Greenways had a comment about.
Yeah, I did have a question on that. Was Greenway so they're going to get with Greenway potentially, if they come back, there may be some additional requests associated with the Greenway that would be a part of their variance request? Is that?
Yeah, that would be my assumption.
Okay.
Yeah, we received a couple of comments through Greenways through the planning submittal, and they just said, "Hey, come talk to us." We're showing the Greenway. There will be an easement, maintenance agreement, and all that. They had primarily a question about the part of the Greenway that would coincide with this access, and that being paved instead of gravel.
So wouldn't that have to be part of the entire package, that design? Or is that part of, it's not just the easement you're dedicating, you guys will have to also build the Greenway?
That's correct.
Then you would have to apply for that all at once, I would suggest.
Yes, our SP submittal included the Greenway.
Understood, but that wasn't an approval for the variance. So if they are now asking for a paved Greenway, that would, in my mind, make you have to widen more.
I don't think so. I don't think it impacts this area that we're asking for the wetland fill.
Let me say it a different way. If those Greenway and those improvements impact any of the buffers on site, then my advice would be to come in comprehensively with everything.
Yes, we would.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's kind of part of the conversation today, is to figure out in the commission's eyes, are we capturing everything that would be a variance? Because there's a handful of things that look like impacts but are covered under Table 6.3 that may not be. So yeah, absolutely, that's great feedback, that we're trying to come in with one variance and get everything done at one time.
I think staff can help with that of, does this require variance or not, if part of the greenways in the buffer or not, and whether, to what extent it would fall under the variance request or be exempt based on, similar to the agricultural disruptions.
The only other thing I would add, just in terms of the landscape mitigation plan, is to understand how you would be approaching this from an implementation standpoint if you're kind of locating them, and the way that you're depicting it. Assume you're not going to irrigate them and that sort of thing. So ensuring that you have an implementation plan that will align with a success rate that would be, time of year. And also I would recommend that you evaluate your quantity to assume some natural succession of those species, so that whatever the mitigation number is that you're targeting, you've accounted for that in the number that you're planting above it, unless you're just planning to replace them all and make sure that they get managed in an appropriate way, if that makes sense. Because it's great to have them, but if they get planted in August, then you won't really get anything for them. And so it'd be really important to understand how that is going to be approached from the development standpoint, and what the management plan is for them.
I'd also recommend you be very clear on where you're going to put signage with the mitigation, given that looks like they're going to be in close proximity to RVs and maybe children playing and things like that. So the education to help protect that will be important in this type of situation.
All right, Mr. Parrish, you feel like you got enough feedback to?
Yeah, thank you so much. I really do appreciate all this time. I think we may be a little bit over, so thank you so much.
Okay, all right.
And we'll be back at some point.
Great, that sounds good. Looking forward to it.
Thank you.
Okay, all right. Okay, folks. Was that the last item on the agenda?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved. Seconded. All in favor? Aye. All right, everybody. Good job. See you soon.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.